All right. 1, 2, 3, ready, go. Welcome to Preacher in the Hat. My name is Steve, and I'm glad to be with you tonight. Very seldom am I the one to start it off, but for some reason or other, that's my task today. I think Derek said it might be the first time
I think
in
it is.
50-plus episodes.
60, almost 70 episodes.
Yeah, well, how about that? I get to be the host tonight. How about that? What a special treat. For me, I think. I don't know about for you, but how about for me? So, yeah, on my right is Derek.
Yeah, that's right.
One of my sons, and a delight to be around. And number 2, on my left is Eric, another son of mine who's a delight to be around. And behind the mic, as usual, over there, without a camera, is the one and only Mr. Chris Sump Daddy. Yeah, baby.
Why is that going to do that for himself every time?
I thought we saved that for guests.
I guess it's kind of an example of what the scripture says when David encouraged himself in the Lord. Is that what you're doing right there, encouraging yourself in the Lord, Chris?
That's certainly a spin. That's certainly a spin you could put on it.
Yeah, that's a spin you could put on it, right? So yeah, tonight we're going to talk about something that is, and for the next few episodes, we're going to spend some time talking about something that is been a part of my life for a long time. Well, first of all, we're going to take a look at the state of manhood, I guess, is if you want to get real fancy and overall and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure we're going to figure it all out. But taken from betterman.com is a 2024 report called The State of Man. And it's done by some people who've been working with men in churches and a faith-based perspective for quite a while. Lewis was one of the guys that did it for many years. And now Dr. Harper is doing it. He calls himself Harp.
Who is Lewis?
Pardon me?
You said Lewis, like we should know.
Yeah, I think it's Robert Lewis, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
You should have seen that. He has a little foreword. You can go on betterman.com.
Dr. Robert Lewis.
Yeah, if you'd like to follow.
Founding partner.
There you go.
There it is.
There it is. And he founded actually Men's Fraternity, which was something that was kind of a nationwide organization that worked with men for years. Better Man is kind of the next step in that process. And betterman.com, if you want to go on betterman.com, I recommend it. And you can pull down on that just by signing up. No cost to you. You can pull down the State of Manhood 2024, which is a PDF that you can use to follow along with us if you want to do so in the next few, because we'll be referring to certain things they talk about in there and so forth. So anyhow, as we start this discussion, we'll be talking about a man in his faith, a man in his family, a man in his work, and so forth. But one of the things that strikes me that they say here at betterman.com is that they have it's their opinion, and I want to see what you guys think. Eric, Derek, Chris, chime in. They say that the most unreached people group in the world, including the United States of America, the most unreached people groups is men.
Define unreached.
Well, that term is often used when you're thinking about people who are not really been impacted greatly by the gospel. I don't mean that they're not people that have not heard the gospel. Sometimes it's used in that phrase where they've not really heard the gospel and so forth. But I think in this context, the way I understand what they're saying, and again, it's their opinion, and so we can challenge it if we want to, but they're saying that in America, that one of the most unreached people groups with the gospel is men. In other words, that there's been more focus and effort been done with women and with children than there have been with men. That women tend to respond better. When you go to many churches today, in fact, they cite the statistic, which I've heard before other places, is that in American churches, 61% of the people that attend are female, and 39% of the people that attend a church in America are male. So you have a 60-40 kind of difference in variance there. There's quite a few million And you'll see this in the State of Manhood survey that there's quite a few million married women who go to church without their men coming with them. On an anecdotal level, locally and otherwise, I talk to pastors, and that seems to be the case many times, that the women and children, church seems to be for the women and children. And when I grew up in the country in South Georgia, that was certainly the case. We had women that seemed more ready to hear the gospel and respond. Men, even though they were nice, maybe hardworking, and they were providing for their families, did not really want to become a part of the church very often. Mm-hmm. Usually the women led the way. So unreached means we have not reached them or touched them or engaged with them.
I think I get it. I think I would agree with that if by saying unreached, we're saying that church programs and offerings tend to focus more intently on women's ministries and kids' ministries. I mean, that makes sense. I definitely see that being the case.
Yeah, I don't think it's about lack of opportunity.
Yeah,
or lack of
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. They talk about that distinction, Eric, like you're bringing up about the women and women's ministries and men's ministries in churches, and the vast difference of how many women's ministries are in a church or in the church in general as opposed to men. I don't have that right in front of me here, but they have that in that State of the Manhood, the State of Manhood 2024, that whole thing. So they're saying that women's ministry is focused upon a lot more in at least organized church. So
how much of that is on the church?
I guess
is where my mind goes, because I think you kind of get into this vicious cycle of watering it down so that more men will be interested or something like that.
Okay.
And then losing interest altogether. I don't know. I'm curious because you see a lot of men's groups and they're getting together to eat and watch the game, or I'll go fishing or I'll go golfing or whatever. Right. And that's really kind of what has been the target of just like, let's get men around the church, like I feel like in a lot of ways that's where it kind of leaned over the last couple decades or whatever.
I agree.
So like how much of that is the church just, I don't know, is it did we oversimplify what we were trying to do with, or did we water it down too much?
Yes and yes.
Yeah,
probably. So I wonder where we got the idea, generally speaking, Derek, that men did not want to be challenged with, if I could use the term, intense discipleship, or with discipleship period. Where do we get the idea that they more wanted to see church as something social as opposed to something where their social needs could be met, but not their spiritual needs? I wonder where we got that idea. Why did we think that was the case? Chris, what do you think? Where did we get that idea that men are not going to really be passionate about, about Jesus, about following Jesus, about doing it? Where do we get that idea? If Derek's right, that maybe the church compromised, or...
And I'm not saying it's all on every church and that all of them did it wrong.
I don't hear that.
But, that has to play part of a factor.
I think Better Man would agree with you, actually.
What say you, Chris?
That's a great question. That's a dang good question.
I wonder where we got that idea. I think sometimes in some cultures, in our culture, the idea was from very early for boys that church was primarily for women and girls. And So men and boys, if boys don't see their daddy going to church, by the time they get to be a teenager and they don't see him involved in discipleship, then, how does that impact their willingness to participate from an early age if their thought processes are, well, that's not really for us. We're just along for the ride. Church is really for the women, I don't think that's...
I saw my dad go to church, but I don't remember there being a whole lot of Bible studies or anything like that.
Right. Yeah. Well, I was reading, and they refer this in Deuteronomy, maybe. Look what he says, really. He said, listen, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone, and you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And you must commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these commands that I'm giving you. Repeat them again and again to your children. Talk about them when you are at home and when you are on the road, when you are going to bed and when you are getting up. Tie them on your hands to your hands and wear them on your forehead as reminders. Write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates. So I don't think here, this was a talk about just attending synagogue, was it? It was about a lifestyle. So where is it that what are some of the thought processes we have is that maybe men are not going to want lifestyle evangelism. They might be willing to come to church, maybe, but that getting serious about God is for the women and the children. Is that true, number one? Certainly not across the board. It's not. But if they're the most unreached people group, then there must be something like that going on.
I think for a lot of guys, it's really easy to it's really easy for guys to connect with something really simple.
Okay.
Like, I don't know if you ever noticed that. And there's almost a little bit of like a meme culture around about how guys can hang out with another guy, never even learn their name, but like they bond over the fact that they both did this.
Something. They did something. Uh-huh.
And so I think those type, like, social connection or connection with people for guys is really simple. Mm-hmm. It's not that, like, that's, I know it sounds just like a blanket broad statement. And so I am speaking in general, obviously there's nuances, but, that connection is super simple, that I think we probably just over time, we've just let it be that simple. And like, kind of like how Derek mentioned, it just started to be about getting together. And then that's pretty much what it is. You bond over something basic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and everything can remain surface level.
Yeah.
Because we connect super easily at a surface level. So you don't have to dig super. Yeah. You don't have to dig deep to connect.
Yeah.
So we don't. Mm-hmm. I think, it doesn't mean we never do, but if we're talking about the problem of that, being a problem, that's, to me, that's one of the root causes.
So when I was a young pastor, I remember being startled by a man that had grown up in the Amish church and in Mennonite church. And he was a businessman, very successful businessman. He was one of the leaders in the church, not a pastor, but one of the leaders, a deacon. He went to church, participated fully with his family, raised his family in church, and participated. But one day, and he was my dad's age, so he would be a generation ahead of me. One day we were talking, and he made this comment to a group of men around and said, women are just more spiritual than men. Okay, Derek, you're the young pastor who was sitting there where a member of your church says, well, you know that women are just more spiritual than men. And he didn't say it as in hostilely. He didn't say it in defense of anything. He stated it as a fact. How would y'all responded? Well, what do you say next? How do you... And I think that's the question. He made a statement, but I'm asking a question. Is it true that women just tend to be more spiritual than men? And if so, was that God's design?
I mean,
or what happened?
Like I was saying a little bit ago, in that context of small, let's just say, two small groups at a church, one men's, one women's. In general, women may be better, like I said, at connecting at a deeper level. So that's where it comes. So then that's what it looks like to this guy, that women are more spiritual. So they're connecting with each other at a deeper level. And maybe guys aren't connecting at that deeper level. Chris, if we just met, and besides connecting over the fact that we both have a relationship with Jesus, what are things that you and I, even if we didn't know each other, what are things that you and I could come around to in less than a minute to connect on?
We both love to eat. Yeah, I mean, to your point about, like, even if you had a sign-up sheet and we're like, we're going to have a women's retreat.
Yeah.
I can guarantee you're going to have more women's signatures on that than if you had a guy's retreat. I mean, it's just going to happen. I mean, and so when your friend or whoever he was said that, he was probably just speaking on what he had seen,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so
looking at it,
it's just observation
of numbers.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Even though he was in a church where there were many men.
Right.
This was not a church that a lot of women came to church without their man.
I mean, this could also have been someone who was in a relationship where the woman was more spiritual than he was, and he felt that, well, that's just how it is.
Well, one case,
I don't know.
Yeah. One case in point, I think, and he would not mind me saying this because we had conversations about it, and he can't protest right now, but your Uncle Darrell, when he was newly married, he married Janet, who was your aunt. And when they were first married and for the first 10 years of their marriage, if you were to ask somebody who knew those two, who was a spiritual leader in the home, they probably would have said Janet. But something changed through the years. And by the time you all knew them and were old enough to know them, you could see that he was certainly a spiritual leader and the spiritual leader in his home. It switched. It's not because Janet changed and became less spiritual. It's because Darrell began to understand his responsibility to be the spiritual leader in his home, and he took it seriously and grew like crazy over the years. And so for the last 25 years of his life, it was completely different.
I think something like that, there's a statistic in what we're referencing, talking about how about 30% of the men that were surveyed revealed a lack of genuine male and godly friendships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I would say that that might be a conservative number because it's probably a bigger percentage than that.
Yeah, I would too.
And I think that sort of thing is what leads to not really almost being afraid to dig into that kind of stuff, because if you don't have friends that believe what you believe, it makes it tough. And if you're not going to spend time with other friends like that, then like you're kind of doing yourself a disservice, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To your point earlier about your friend that made this discovery, or he was just sort of saying what he thought he saw. Sometimes I think when we see, I'm going to get in trouble in like 9 different languages for saying this, but anyway, the point is sometimes when you see a woman get emotional in church, I think there's this tie that we think that means that they're closer to the Lord, or they're like, they're, you know what I mean? Like if you don't have that response, then you didn't have a moment. And so I think there's this idea that maybe because men, I mean, how many times do you see a man cry in church?
Yeah, sure.
You like one in a, I mean,
that's the, like that societal thing that we had where for a long time where men were, you know, not supposed to, and still have the men were not supposed to like show emotion.
Right.
Obviously came into the church because men took that for like their life to say like don't show emotion, and so you get that observational stuff to where you say like men don't do that in church.
And I'm not saying emotions and spirituality are the same.
No,
but I think
I know what you're saying. Yeah,
I think people think they are,
but that's why I was saying like from an observational perspective, people think well men just aren't, when in reality it's like a lot of it is just they've been taught to conceal their emotion. So outward emotion, inward, whatever.
So we have to give the message, I think, by action and in words. We have to say that men don't become more spiritual if they become more like women. So then what does it look like to be a godly man? You know what I'm saying? What does that look like? And to say, what does that look like? It may not mean the same thing, that it means exactly the same thing as men, as what women are experiencing. We don't have to experience it exactly the same way the women do. You know, somebody a pastor friend of mine was talking about this today to me. We were talking some about it, and he was saying about how the churches he's been to, and he's been numerous ones, where he said it looks unusual. So he was observing Sunday in our setting. He said, I went to the back, and he said, I looked around and thought, wow, there's a bunch of men here, and this is unusual. From his experience, in terms of just the number of people that were sitting there, and how there was at least as many or more men than what there was women and children. So that is an oddity for many people. If you're in a setting where that's not true, you just don't think about it. But the setting is that usually it's a 60-40 the other way, and that kind of thing. So it's not just about church attendance that we're talking about. Obviously, we've already distinguished that, I think. Church attendance is one thing, but it's like, what about godly relationships and being a godly man? Just in life, what does that look like day in and day out? Not what does it look like as to whether I go to church or not. Because you think about the percentage of people that just do go to church but are not involved in any kind of discipleship, really, day to day. You know, they may not be, but anyhow. So you dads, do y'all ever talk about to your children? Do you do this Deuteronomy thing and or is that the job of the mama?
I don't know if we tie it around our heads or whatever the thing is. Although
that's kind of interesting. Isn't it?
I think we're really giving examples there of like, you know, keeping God's word close and
that's
close
right. I think that's what it means.
So
it says, tie them to your hands and wear them on your forehead as reminders. Yeah. So I guess men could get like a tattoo, a religious tattoo as a reminder, right? On the head, forehead? Is that what we need to do?
We can do.
Is that a modern day thing?
Chris, you can arrange.
Can you arrange that, Chris?
You probably
I think it's like even maybe it's generational. You know what I mean? Like with the whole deal with being led by other men, you know what I mean? I don't remember that stuff going on when I was growing up.
Yeah,
like, you know what I mean? Right. I don't remember that. I'm not saying it didn't, but I don't remember it. I think we're probably better as men at like getting together in groups now than I think we've probably ever been. And just depends on the culture, but I certainly don't remember. I mean, we were in church a lot, but not like how I see you getting with other guys and you know, training them up and stuff like that.
That's right.
I didn't see much of that.
Yeah.
And generations later, I think you probably pay the price for that.
Yeah, I think so. Because I think there was church attendance in the previous generation, but it didn't necessarily translate to godly discipleship day in and day out. Although I have heard I have heard many men say, or women even say, that their dad would have his Bible and be kneeling down, and praying for the family. They would hear that. My father always led us in family devotions in the evening. He was more engaged than my mom was, because mom was usually tired that time of night. But dad was still had energy, and he would engage with us. We would read scripture, we would pray together, but he would also engage about our day. How did your day go, and all that kind of thing. So I did see that every evening. And sometimes mom would be over there kind of like, that kind of thing. And grandpa was rocking and rolling. Your grandpa was rocking and rolling, my dad. So I was blessed to see somebody who did take that very seriously and did it. Not because he thought he had to. I could tell he enjoyed it. Yeah. He enjoyed talking about it. Now, as years went on, there was less of that, which was kind of interesting. And so apparently that was something that he was better at when we were younger than he was when we were older, in terms of talking to us about Jesus and talking to us about how things were. Although he would pray with us, and I know he prayed for us quite a bit too. Mm. So not just my mom, but to have a praying dad, to know that your dad was praying for you and teaching, that's a pretty cool thing. But it's an unusual thing, I think, perhaps more unusual than we think.
Sure. I mean, I think those stats probably line up with that. I mean, there's no way that there's not some correlation there. So
I agree. I think that's right. Okay, so I was looking here on the Better Man thing, and I actually jumped over.
You have a handout for our listeners.
I have handouts. Yes, for our listeners.
Can you pass them through the screen, please?
What I'll be looking at is something that you can find if they click betterman.com. Go to betterman.com. Punch up the PDF.
Wait, hold on. You just said Better Men, and then you said Better Man. Is it Better Man?
BETTERMAN.
Okay, and I was just making sure man or men.
That's man.
They're not paying us for this,
but it sounds like a country song in the making.
Because it doesn't charge. They don't charge anything for it. But it would just. Here's what I think might be missing. Where we have not taught men how the gospel would impact the following, in my opinion. I'm just giving an opinion now based upon this. Nearly all men report carrying one or more emotional burdens, they say here. These burdens include burnout, 31%, anxiety, 27%, depression, 15%, discontentment, 25%, and discouragement, 29%, almost 30%. I think women may say, how does the gospel apply to the following emotional burdens, which they have too. But I'm not sure that men have been taught how the gospel, the good news of Jesus, applies in these kind of situations. And so a significant number of men reported feelings of loneliness or isolation, feeling that they're isolated. Nearly 1/3 of the survey men revealed a lack of genuine, you said that already, godly relationships, 30%, were resulting in feelings of despair and loneliness that directly impacted their spiritual health. So it was on a level of spiritual, emotional connectedness. To your point, Chris, is we think, well, the women are emotional.
Could you say that one more time?
Yeah. To your point, Chris, piggybacking on your wise statement, you're liking this. The thing is that we need to help men and help each other see how the gospel applies in this situation. It said 1 in 4 men admitted their passivity in spiritually leading their families. They don't feel like they're doing it. They're passive about it. I think that's a small number too, honestly. I think these statistics are underestimated, not overestimated, honestly. I really do. And so I know this will come as a shock.
What percentage did you say on that last one?
The 30%, 1 in 4 men admitted their passivity in spiritually leading their families. 1 in 4, 25% of men would admit that they're passive about it. They aren't intentional. They aren't active about it. They just kind of like, whatever, I can take it. I'll take them to church. That's my responsibility. That kind of thing. Not, hey, let's talk to you about where are you at with Jesus? Talk to your children about that, or tell me how Jesus is impacting that. Or like I got to do today with my 9-year-old grandson. He'd been wanting to pray with me about some things, about some generalized anxiety and stuff like that. We sat right upstairs up there, and I said, let's do it, buddy. And we started this afternoon. We sat there for about 45 minutes, and we talked about something he was going through and about some of the lies he believed. And I said, let's let Jesus talk to you. And Jesus did. And that boy's face just broke out in a huge grin. And it was like, yeah. And he heard Jesus say, he said, well, he said this, he said, and it was just, it's a joy to do that at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday afternoon with your 9-year-old grandson, and who's sensitive to what God wants and who wants that kind of thing. So it's a natural thing when you deal with anxiety with this little 9-year-old grandson, because I've prayed with him before, and his parents have prayed with him, and they knew he wanted to pray with me too. That's the kind of thing we can do, but you have to be intentional about it. I had to say to him, look, let's sit down and do this today, and he was here already with his Gigi keeping him, and his grandmother keeping him. And so there we get to do that. And I think sometimes we prayed with women because they've acknowledged it, but he's learned through the years, because of the environment he's in, is that he too can hear from God about how to respond and what to do. And that Jesus cares about how he had generalized anxiety. And he also was talking to me, and he won't mind me talking about this. I didn't call his name, and that's cool. But he also,
it's your podcast. You can say what you want.
Yeah, that's right. He had a coach that told him the other day that he was disappointed in the team. Well, to this little kid who's very conscientious, that's just rough, And so we had to tell him, and I love this, and I know he would not mind me saying this. The truth that Jesus told him was, your coach was disappointed in you, but I wasn't. And he heard Jesus say that. And it was true. I saw the game. This boy was engaged. He was working hard. He was doing what he needed to do. Jesus was not disappointed by his effort. His coach was, but Jesus wasn't. And so for a kid to learn that at 9 years old, a young boy, think about what that can help him as he goes on. So that's discipleship with men. But a lot of times it needs to be one-on-one. That's not just something that's done in a church setting. So as husbands, grandfathers, and grandfathers seek to lead their families, they confess that along with these emotional burdens, which we talked about, they face temptations to sin daily. I know this will come as a surprise. Lust, 62%. That's probably low. Pride, 60%. That's probably a little low. Selfishness, 50%. Impatience, 55%. Outbursts of anger, 36%. Spiritual apathy, 25%. What I'm saying is, for men, does the gospel meet your needs? Are we communicating a gospel in our discipleship process with men, in our relationships with men? Are we communicating to them that the gospel applies to every area of your life, man?
Maybe that's the disconnect. You know what I mean?
It is the disconnect.
But where it's like it's not getting in to those areas of my life.
That's right.
It's like it's just more theology.
And I think, Chris, along that line, what happens is men then make the decision is the gospel doesn't work for me the way it works for women. And that is a lie from the very pit of hell. And I think we have to be intentional about it. And that's what I want us to talk about in the next few episodes, is let's talk about ways that we can take a look at a man and his work, a man and his faith, a man and his family, and what are some specific things we can do together? How can we challenge each other? How can we learn from each other in such a way that this large unreached people group out here can one day decide that the gospel meets my needs. The gospel challenges me in my personal life, in my daily life. That's the message that we get to tell these guys. And I think men like a challenge. I think the problem is we don't challenge them enough. To say Jesus can talk to you too. Chris, Jesus don't just talk to your wife.
That's right.
He talks to you.
Well,
Eric, he doesn't just talk to your wife. Derek, you just doesn't talk to your wife, I feel like I need to pass the offering plate.
I feel
now.
like you're about to shake a tree. Is what I
right?
think. Yes,
okay,
I
is
do.
that what I'm doing?
Yes, I do.
So, Eric, final comments, and then Derek, final comments. Anything.
I'll switch over to you, bro, right now.
Anything.
What's one thing you will take away from this discussion? One thing, just one thing. Anything. Doesn't have to be deep. Chris,
I'm ready to go.
Chris, what's one thing?
I tell you what, like when you said we were the unreached people group, I was waiting. I expect a check to be coming my way. I want some reparations. You know what I mean? But
Reparations.
Wow.
I do.
No, that's not
from
what
the
that
church,
is at
eh?
all.
Okay, well there you go.
I do think that man, I'm not a sociologist, but I do think society has given us a task to do, and we've gotten really good at doing that task.
What's
and
that?
It's not walking with the Lord. You know what I mean? Because even like if you look at cultures like from my dad's age, and even maybe one more generation up, if you hear a lot of these men talking about their fathers, they always a lot of times they say the same things about how.
And what do they say, Chris?
They're good dudes and they worked really hard.
They're good dudes and they work really hard. Yeah, there you go. They don't.
If you're going, I'd rather be a good dude than a bad dude.
I mean, yeah.
Right? I'd rather be a hard worker than a
we're not being
lazy.
negative
But
about that.
that's not getting it.
But they're not necessarily known, man. You know, my dad was a follower of Jesus.
Yeah,
that's not what you hear.
No,
I agree.
I would say, for anybody who, if this connected home, or if this connected with you, or hit home for you, we can choose to change things in our lives without, like, what I'm trying to say is, don't wait on the church to get it right.
That's right.
Take it upon yourself to do these things, and don't wait for like, well, my church doesn't really have this and that. It doesn't have this. And like, well, you can start leading your family
Pastor
today,
Derek,
right now.
Word.
Yeah.
I go to the gym on Tuesdays and Thursdays during the week, and a lot of times I'll go protein bowl from Chick-fil-A after. Yeah. And every day, every Tuesday and Thursday, I don't know if that's the only days or whatever, there by the drive-through window and the Chick-fil-A that I go in, right before the drive-through window, you can see into the restaurant. And every day there's a table of like 6 to 8 guys sitting there. Not a single one of them is over 18. I don't know who. Nobody told him to be there. But there's no phones out and there's Bibles open on the table. And so there's people out there making that, there's guys out there making that decision to do it. And I don't know if anyone's making them do it. It doesn't look like anybody's making them be there. But we can choose to, and it's not all just about getting out and, waking up at the crack of dawn to meet at a Chick-fil-A or something. It can be like we got to start in our families.
It's
and all
like
that
before
stuff.
School, you think maybe, huh?
Yeah,
Is that in the Grove?
Yeah,
I've seen them there, but I've seen them on Wednesday.
No, but I'm hearing a lot. I'm hearing a lot about a lot of young people that are getting together and doing some.
And
young guys too.
Yeah. What I'm saying is, like, there's still time for change, but the numbers don't have to go. Like, we can sit here and pray that the numbers skyrocket and all that stuff, whatever. The reality is stats don't really like, they're not going to tell the whole story, and we can't just sit around and hope and wait.
Yeah, and I think
taking it upon ourselves.
I think you're right, and to not sitting around and wait, because we don't need to feign the idea that there's some sort of repression happening, or that let ourselves believe that there's some sort of repression happening that we can't do anything about.
Yeah.
That's correct.
This is absolutely 110% on us.
Absolutely.
And it's our responsibility.
That is wonderful, because here we go. Next episode, we're going to continue. But here's a word that you might hear from me more than once in the next few episodes. The word intentional. We have to be intentional. It will not just happen. Discipling men will not just happen. And you've already given us, Derek, and you, Eric, examples of how it already is happening. But I tell you, it's intentionality. Those guys didn't just fall into Chick-fil-A and all one day decide, hey, whatever. Or do you think we ought to have a Bible study this time? They don't do it that way. They're doing it intentionally, and we can do that. 2. For Steve.
For yourself.
For Derek.
There we go.
For Eric. For Chris.
Behind the cameras.
This is Preacher in the Hat, and we've enjoyed having you along. I hope it spurred your attention, caught your attention. Hang with us. We're going to have some better discussion, even more discussion as we go. God bless. Peace out.